Hello and welcome on this Asset Builder episode. Today we are very happy to have John Pryor with us. I met John Pryor on LinkedIn, and today we are going to talk about a passionate subject, the protection of trade secrets. John, can you introduce yourself for those who don't know you yet?
Yeah, thank you very much, William. Yeah, John Pryor, based in the UK, but working internationally. I've been working in the field of intellectual property for the last 20 years. And what I am really passionate about is helping business leaders to build a value in their business by protecting their ideas, their creativity, and their competitive advantage. And to use intellectual property to achieve that. So what I'm passionate about is just making sure that it's the information, the know-how, the knowledge is freely available to as many people as possible. And that's why I'm here today. Thank you, William.
Thank you. Can you explain, just for those who are not aware of those things, what is trade secrets?
Yeah, sure. Most people will consider trade secrets that they have trade secrets. Most people will consider that they've got confidential information within the business, and therefore they have some form of trade secret. That is maybe, but I think the law has changed substantially in the last 6, 7, 8 years, and it's now important to take a couple of steps to protect what I would probably describe as confidential information or know-how, to make sure that they can be considered as trade secrets. So from a definitional perspective, a trade secret can be a practice or process or knowledge within a company, but it must include 4 concepts. It must be business related, technical or commercial information. So it can be an invention, but the commercial aspects, the commercial information means it could also be a customer list or your customer pricing. So the second point is it must not be known to the public. It must be secret. And, that's easy to say, but of course, difficult to enact in practice. Keeping stuff secret is not easy for any of us. Thirdly, its secrecy must provide an actual or a potential economic advantage to the company. So there must be a financial benefit from that trade secret. And then finally, there must be reasonable steps taken to protect the secret against disclosure, i.e. confidentiality agreements that specifically state that, or even some physical security to stop the secret being stolen.
I have the feeling that trade secrets offer the possibility to cover a blind spot in IP portfolio, because you can go further than with patent or other classical intellectual property rights. But at the same time, I have the sentiment that company may see trade secret as fallback, that you discover that you have a trade secret only the day you need it. What do you think about this?
I think that's a really good summary, actually, right? Let's consider what trade secrets we do know about. We know the metadata of, but we don't know the actual trade secret. So, it might be slightly apocryphal, but, we believe that the Coca-Cola recipe is a trade secret held in a vault in Atlanta, and it's been held there for over 100 years. We believe that forgive these American businesses, the Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe is a trade secret. We believe that the Google algorithm, the search algorithm, is kept as a trade secret. So there's a couple of examples, and I think you're absolutely right. I don't think many businesses, and I don't think many CEOs of many businesses would be clearly able to describe what a trade secret was. And moreover, even if they could describe that, they couldn't point to the trade secrets in their organization and where they're held, how they're documented, and how you can prove that you had them at a certain point in time. And to your point, I think it's to go back to my original statement, it's growing in importance. So it's very commonplace for somebody to have patents and to essentially, of course, what a patent is publishing that invention. And we're talking about trade secrets as being private, so keeping that invention or that commercial information private. So the big difference between the two is that one is public and one is private. So if that's your business that you're protecting, your business line that you're protecting, even with a family of patents, and the key aspects, claims of those patents are found to be invalid, what have you got left to protect the business? And that's why I think people now are beginning to see a combination of patent and trade secret is a really important way of protecting commercial inventions in that case. But I think another aspect of this is modern business. So you have to think beyond just patents and trademarks now for modern business as to how you protect the competitive advantage of the business. And that's, I think, in part where trade secrets come in. They do complement, for example, the algorithms in your business can be protected by copyright. They can also be protected by trade secrets as well.
Do you have example of tangible measures that you can be implement to protect trade secret, like maybe both physical and digital things you can put in place?
Yeah, I think even before you get to the physical or digital, I think the biggest risk from trade secrets, leakage, should we say, or even theft, is people. Really, the biggest threats are employees, people walking, leaving the business or inadvertently sharing secrets without thinking about it. And this is where partnerships and joint ventures and other corporate structures cause substantial risk to a business. Because if I go into a joint venture with another business and we're sharing the development of a certain concept or idea, product, etc., my employees will be talking to your employees, and over coffee things will be discussed. So the way you deal with that is you introduce contracts. Of course, my employment contract should say exactly what I can and can't do, and then you need to remind me and you need to train me so that I understand what a trade secret is and what trade secrets in the business I can and can't discuss and under what terms. And then you've taken steps, because those steps are really important. The law is not going to stand on your side unless you're able to point to an employment contract that said, we told him, he signed the agreement so he couldn't do it. By way of physical and digital, yeah. The other thing, probably the big reason why governments are really interested in trade secrets, is that the whole hacking thing. So hacking is substantial. And so protecting your trade secrets against hacking is really important, particularly if you are a big business. And of course, one way you can prevent that happening potentially, or reduce the risk of that, is to use technological digital barriers, and maybe just moving sensitive information that you've deemed to be sensitive, away from an open network to put it onto a closed internal network, for example. And then, of course, you say physical measures. Are the physical measures? Well, if we kept our secrets in a safe in Atlanta, the Coca-Cola, then we'd probably have some pretty strong doors on that room, and we'd probably have some guards and stuff. So yeah, there are aspects of physical as well, I guess.
Trade secret is deeply linked with security, and at the same time, I feel it's kind of a management style around secrets. You need to have an organization that is aware of the thing, just the same way you will be teaching people to close their computer. I wanted to say it was very linked to the informatic security.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what you're alluding to there is the whole concept of culture within a business. I mean, we work in an environment now, and for the last 10 or 15 years, of openness, open source software. And employees are more likely to have an openness culture than they are to have a secrecy culture. And I think, therefore, it's important any business or organization just trains staff and explains to them why it's really important that they don't share the algorithm on your software, because the value that provides for your business, and how protecting it is really important to every stakeholder in the business, including the employees. So I think it's an education point, but you're absolutely right. It's cultural. It's how you go about training people and getting people to understand and buy in, I think, is really important to get them on board to understand that. And that's possibly more challenging today than it was 30 years ago, 20 years ago, because of the sort of open culture that we have at the moment.
I'm thinking that at the same time, is there like kind of a risk of creating too much friction in your company if you create this culture of secrecy? Like, are there trade-offs that need to be made regarding what is a trade secret and what is not?
Yeah, I mean, I think the point is to have a categorization. If I can be very simplistic and think of a traffic light system, red at the top, highly confidential, for your eyes only. amber in the middle. Possibly can be shared, but really only to close partners and certain employees and investors, for example, but only under an NDA, a confidentiality agreement that protects trade secrets. And then green at the bottom. Well, this stuff is public. We're not shouting or advertising it, but we can make it public. We can, this is our investor information. This is our new product launch, etc. So I think having a sort of categorization is really important, but it is a challenge, and there is a friction. But and you may or may not be aware that there's so much reverse engineering and trade secret copying and theft that takes place at sales conferences. So I don't know if you've ever been to the CES show in America, which is a phenomenal experience. It's all about computers, consumer electronics, and the latest versions of watches and phones and all the rest of it. Brilliant, absolutely fantastic to attend. But the competitors have sent out guys to go and visit every single stand to try and get the salespeople to tell them more than they should about the latest research and what's coming next and what how it actually works and stuff like that. So you have to be savvy enough to understand that this is a very competitive environment, and you can share some stuff, but you cannot share everything. And
if I need, for example, to protect an innovation, I'm always wondering, like, how will you decide between like trade secrets, patent, or even like a defensive publication? Do you have a way to arbitrate on what's better to you?
Yeah, these are good questions, and it's a commercial decision which has to fit in with the business objectives. So there is no single answer, and the answer will vary today from 6 months' time because the business will move forward. At the highest level, if you think about an invention, you come up with the latest invention on electric vehicle battery technology. That's the secret at the moment because you've just determined it, on your lab bench with your five colleagues, and you retain that as a secret. It may well be that you go, okay, so is this something that's really unique and really breakthrough, and we don't think anybody else is going to get to this point soon? Because if we think somebody else in the UK or France can get to the same point soon and have that same invention, then a trade secret is okay, but it's not going to be as strong as a patent, and we're probably better off patenting that invention. Yes, and defensive publication is it's an important method of intellectual property protection, but of course you are essentially sharing that and stopping others from patenting that technology. That's what you're doing, because either share it there's no real point to share it in a well-read or even intellectual property magazine. Just that it's been published means that it can't be patented, and so you are negating anybody else's ability to generate the rewards or benefits from patenting further down the line. So that's trade secrets to patent and defensive publication. It really depends on the objectives, and it's not an IP department decision. It's a business decision with the IP and the legal teams and whomever else, engineering, etc., all involved. Because the key question is, can that invention be reverse engineered easily? And if so, then patenting it makes a lot of sense.
Of course. Um, this makes me think that you're talking about licensing, for example, and you can certainly exert market power with trade secrets. But what about other means of monetization? Like, for example, licensing. I guess it's way more difficult than when you have a patent, of course, because you need to share something that's secret.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and it's easier to license a patent because it's public information, and you're risking. There's a significant risk, I suppose, by licensing trade secrets, because you are at risk of the other organization leaking those secrets, and once they're leaked, then they're destroyed. So I think the terms and conditions are really important in terms of your contracts around the license of trade secrets, and then that's crucial. It's an open licensing isn't possible because you're going to be licensing with one or two, or a limited number of people under limited terms, jurisdictions, etc. And in essence, what you're saying in that license is metaphorically, after the end of our agreement, you are handing back, virtually handing back the secret to us, so you cannot continue using it. And it's actually fair to say that a lot of joint ventures and partnerships end up in some form of dispute because of that very reason, because one of the parties goes, oh yeah, that's really good. We learnt about that, didn't we, on that? Yeah, and they go and build a business on the back of it without really thinking about it, that they're infringing somebody else's trade secrets and a contract that they signed years ago. But trade secrets are a categorized, legalized form of know-how. And within any business, there's substantial know-how, some of which is captured as trade secrets, some of which is just kept as know-how. But I think I'm right in saying that when Microsoft bought the Nokia mobile phone business, they were clever enough to go to Nokia. We would like you to share all the know-how and all the trade secrets, everything that you've got on PDF, on SharePoint, in emails.
There is an increasing risk, I feel, of being accused of trade secret, especially with open innovation, studio and big corporates that are trying to buy a startup. I'm thinking of the case with Olaplex, for example, and L'Oreal.
I'm sure many, many times when big companies have gone to small companies and said, we're interested in buying you, the small companies revealed too much and provided pretty much the big company enough information to go off and set up in competition without actually buying the company. And the Netflix drama, and you remind me of its name if you can remember, the $1 Billion Code, released on Netflix last year, is all about that. It's all about a couple of really smart guys in Germany coming up with the idea for Google Maps and presenting it to Google. And Google sort of said, that's interesting, and then did nothing. And of course, a few years later, they launched Google Maps, and arguably it was on the back of the technology of these couple of bright inventors from Germany, but they received nothing for that. So the Netflix drama is about the $1 Billion Code. It's worth $1 billion, and they originated it, but they didn't benefit from it. So, these cases are really, and I could go on for a long time, just giving you case after case, because there's so many of these coming to the courts at the moment. You can't ignore it anymore from an employee perspective, but certainly from the business perspective. It's really important to have the program and the education and understanding in place. But if you go into any form of agreement, and particularly with a much bigger party, like L'Oreal, then you just got to have everything tied down and be as strict as possible with what you share and don't share. And my analogy is probably a bad one, but if I'm selling you my new car that I've invented, I might describe the way the engine works, but I might not just lift the bonnet of the car to show you exactly what the engine does. I might just describe it in descriptive terms. And that's how you should deal with the likes of L'Oreal. You should resist explaining all the detail as far as possible. If that detail is your trade secrets, keep the trade secrets to yourself as long as possible. But if you have to reveal, then make sure it's done under very strict terms and conditions.
Yeah, definitely. Just like, with the GDPR, we now have DPO everywhere. Do you think companies should have someone responsible for trade secrets, ensuring that there is NDA, that we identify trade secrets, that we didn't hire someone that is coming from with trade secret from the competitor, all this kind of job? Why this doesn't exist, whereas the value of the company sits in trade secrets?
I think it's a really good question, and I think it will in the future. I just don't think business has caught up with it. But if you think about it, trade secrecy, as you just described there, touches on a range of different disciplines. It touches on HR, it touches on the sort of employment of employees and employee practices, etc. But it also has implications for IT, as you've touched on, possibly physical security, certainly cyber security. It also has some implications possibly for tax, and therefore finance as well. So, and certainly has implications for business and engineering and so on. So I think it's certainly a discipline that needs to be in place in most business, and maybe even and somebody needs to take charge of it. And why not the DPO? Yeah.
Okay, John, if I wanted to set up a trade secret program, what will you advise? How do we start?
Yeah. I touched on this already, but the key thing is education. Okay, so it's about getting the most important thing you can do, as you've mentioned, is culture, education, and getting people to really understand what trade secrets are, why it's important they shouldn't be shared, and how you should treat them in management. So I think that's a really important step. Once you've got that in place, you're kind of good. I think you then need a policy that describes how trade secrets are managed within the business. So from an HR perspective and IT and so on, and then you need to roll out a program through the business, and that includes identifying what trade secrets you have and categorizing them and manage them accordingly. So I think those are the key 3 or 4 points. An important point, which I didn't raise on any of the interviews so far, is not just your own trade secrets. You need a policy for how you deal with other people's trade secrets as well. Because in partnerships, you will have some of those that come across to you, and you need to make sure that they're treated in the way they should be treated, both whilst the partnership's in place and after the partnership as well. Thank you.
Yeah, it's true. We always think about our own trade secret, but never what are the risk of.
Yeah, substantial risk. I mean, if you're L'Oreal in that particular situation you just described, I mean, it might have been inadvertent, it might not have been deliberate, but once it's done, once you've incorporated that in your product, then you're on the hook, and you're liable to be sued. So, yeah, it's managing the risk from both sides. Really important point.
Okay, thanks a lot, John, for this great conversation and for all your tips. It was very interesting to learn to better understand trade secrets that feel sometimes like a bit complicated to apprehend.
Brilliant. No, it's an absolute pleasure, William, and thanks very much for the opportunity, and look forward to doing this again with you sometime as well. Thank you.
And don't hesitate to follow John on LinkedIn. He's pushing some very interesting tips on IP management.